Got it.
Hey, how are you guys doing today?
Good.
That's good. So today I want to talk about the South Carolina death penalty policy. And so before I start, I know it's a very sensitive topic, and I'm not here to project my viewpoints on the topic, said topic. Instead, I want to look at more of the concrete evidence and how we can fix it to make it better. So currently in South Carolina, what we do is we offer three different options. The first option being the lethal injection, which the Center of Death Penalty Information Center actually since 1967, they said that 1,352 lethal injections have been administered. And the next execution method was the electric chair, which only had 163. So it's the most popular option by far all throughout the United States. And the other one is electric chair, the second most popular. And then the third is the firing arm. Currently, lethal injections are causing a loophole in South Carolina. In South Carolina, if you choose one of the options and it cannot be administered, you cannot technically die. They can't force you to choose another one. Therefore, people are understanding that lethal injections, first of all, they haven't been administered since 2006, just because of the fact that South Carolina can't get their hands on the injection. Therefore, people have been finding this loophole and they're like, oh, I want the lethal injection. And they just get to live for a while. The problem is it's expensive to keep these people on death row. CBS Sacramento actually did research and found a sample size of, I think it was 300 inmates. And they projected that in the United States, it costs about 70 to 80,000 per year per person to keep on death row. And that equates to about $150 million per state per year. And what I'm suggesting is we try to fix the loophole. I'm not saying, oh, lethal injection is bad. And one way that I think we can do it is just by removing lethal injection altogether. There was an interview that New York Times did with Pfizer, the leading pharmaceutical company. And Pfizer said that it's morally wrong and they don't want any part of their drugs being used for a lethal injection. And many other big pharmaceutical companies agreed with them. Another thing that they said is that it's actually more beneficial to them monetary wise to not actually give the drugs as a lethal injection tool. The reason is because the shareholders in Europe are actually against the death penalty in the United States. And they find it that it's better if it's just not administered at all. So that's the biggest issue right now. Pfizer and other companies aren't giving us the drugs, and there's a loophole, and we're spending a lot of money trying to just keep them alive. And since there's no parole or anything for these people, we just have to pay $150 million a year just to keep them alive until we can administer the vaccine. And that's probably not going to ever happen. So my suggestion is to actually replace it with the guillotine. And I know that sounds crazy. Like the guillotines, when you think about it, you think about the Reign of Terror in France and execution, things like that. But in my criminal injustice book, wrote by Aaron Fichtelberg, who's actually a professor at Delaware and has a PhD in intern law, he states possibly the most significant development in the humanization of execution was the invention of the guillotine. So the guillotine was created around the time of the Enlightenment period. And before then, the thought of execution was actually just beheading people with an axe, right? And those axes weren't really sharp. So they would actually take 3 or 4 tries before they could actually sever the head off. So it was a painful death. And at the beginning of the death penalty, like starting from the Romans' time, it was a method of torture. Like people would actually put them in a bag with like full of rats and throw them into the ocean or the river and basically try to give them a cruel and painful death. And during the Enlightenment period, when people said, no, this isn't fair, they created the guillotine around that time. And it was supposed to be the significance of it was that it's supposed to humanize the death penalty. It's supposed to make it less painful. The guillotine was just one cut and it would just sever the head off. And it was the most painless death that we had, well, after the lethal injection. So the reason I suggest that it should be replaced is because there's this common misconception that it's very barbaric. It's barbaric only if you make it a public execution. I think if you do it in private, that the notion of it being barbaric would go away. And the main concern people have is like, oh, the what if the family wants to see the body afterwards? We can do stitching. As terrible as that sounds, you can stitch the head right back on. I know that sounds very bad, but another reason to really implement the guillotine is because of the body parts. If the inmate on death row actually decides that they want their body parts to be used for research for other parts, like such as the liver or their brain, they can actually do that since the body parts are intact. With a lethal injection, actually, you're basically deteriorating all the body parts. You're slowly numbing all of them. You're basically killing all the cells in the body, and that's how they die. And that all the body parts are actually useless. And I think that's a great plus. Well, that's this is ironic because nothing's great about it. But it's a good thing that if they decide to use their body parts for research, they can. And that's basically all I have to say. Do you guys have any questions?
I had a quick question. So, I think it's a really good point. Like you were saying, like the body parts can be used for after, and like with the lethal injection, it's slowly deteriorating. Do you think that, it is like more beneficial then to replace the lethal injection with like something like the guillotine, or just like completely get rid of that like third option and just have like the other two? Like, what would be more so the benefit to like replace it?
Well, okay. So currently, there's another research that's been done, and it says that South Carolina is actually looking at just removing it completely. But the concerns that people have is the firing squad is considered very brutal, right? I mean, no one wants to die with people shooting them. And the electric chair actually just burns your body. And it's more cost like isn't it costs a lot more to provide an electric chair than it does for the guillotine. So I suggest the guillotine was is a great addition because the electric chair it has the same problems as the body parts, right? It electrocutes and burns the body parts. You can't use them for research, even if you wanted to. And I think that's the biggest problem. Excuse me, that's the biggest problem that we have right now.
No, that makes sense. I was just curious.
Mhm.
And that humane aspect too, like you're saying, is definitely probably something beneficial to keep another option there. So that's a good point.
One thing that I think I just want to hear like your opinion on this. So like with like the firing squad, there's I don't even know how many, like 10 guys who all have only one guy has a bullet, but it's in order the reason for doing that is so that no one person feels like they killed somebody because of like the detrimental aspects that can have to somebody's like mental health. Do you think that the guillotine would have those effects because it's just one person kind of releasing the blade? Do you think that that could potentially cause problems for the person who had to administer it, where at least with the injection or the electric chair it's really just kind of like pressing a button, so you're not physically causing the harm? Do you think that the guillotine could potentially have like humanitarian issues from the aspect of the person who had to like drop the blade?
Well, I think to start off, any time you decide to take up a job like that, you should be ready to suffer the consequences, right? You know what you're getting into. It's like working at a morgue. I mean, if you're creeped out by dead bodies, you shouldn't work at the morgue. I understand what you're saying, and I don't think it's any different from someone pressing a button because at the end of the day, you're still taking someone's life. I know it's not directly, but I don't think it'd make too big of a difference because as horrible as it is to say, the electric chair causes trauma for everyone, right? People who are there to see it and stuff like that. Same with a lethal injection and the gas chambers and firearms and everything. So I don't think there's a way to actually prevent that or make it better. That's just the unfortunate truth with the death penalty. So I just look at it as it's another addition, and the same problems are going to rise whether you have that option or not.
Sure, I think that's a good point.
Kind of my viewpoint on what you just said, Coco, is I'm sure it wouldn't be the same exact like guillotine type exactly. So I'm sure like it would be like automatic, I guess. So it's like somebody also would be like pressing a button for it like to come down. And then my question was also what Margaret said is just like replacing it or just completely take it off the table. But yeah, I guess that was really my main question. But I guess it's kind of like, or advocate for them to find another like safer like injection option. But I don't know what type per se.
Actually, the lethal injection is fairly safe. They numb the body so that people can't feel it. They put them to sleep and then they give the injection. So you're basically falling asleep to death. Like, it's a good injection. The problem is Pfizer thinks it's morally wrong. Like, they don't want to do it. So, I mean, since 2000, we've had a decrease in the amount of executions, and the main reason is that these pharmaceutical companies won't give the injection anymore. And I mean, I love that. God dang, I need to be better with my words. I don't love the lethal injection, but I think it's the best option that we have. However, this whole loophole, it's being how do I say it? It's being used by people in the wrong way, and we can't afford to pay 150 million a year just because of a mistake in the law.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like even, I don't know, I guess whenever you go into surgery, they put you under. And I'm sure like that's not very expensive. And that's easily accessible because they do that in the hospitals every single day to millions of people. So like they could do that and then do the firing squad, I guess. So they're already like knocked out. So they don't even like feel it, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. That could be another way.
Yeah, I mean, the whole situation with, like, I know the death penalty is such a sensitive topic, but what do you guys think about do you guys think it's a good idea to have the death penalty implemented in the US or no?
I mean, honestly, I don't know, but like serial killers, like, yeah. Like I don't really care what happens to them. I
Yeah,
guess that's most of the part. Like, obviously, if they're on death penalty, they did something extremely wrong. Like, nobody who committed fraud with the IRS goes on death penalty. It's like when they actually kill people. So,
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm for it. I have kind of a very messed up point of view where I think if you killed somebody by stabbing them like 30 times, I think you should have to die by being stabbed 30 times.
eye for an eye.
It's kind of messed
I was
up.
about to say I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I like the death penalty for mainly rapists and sex offenders. I think those are the worst kind of people out there. And I think
Pedophiles.
Yeah,
Pedophiles done.
yeah.
yeah.
No.
Do you guys have any other questions?
I had, sorry to keep this going. I had one more quick question. So with the Pfizer thing, like they don't morally think it's right. Are there other companies that would be willing to do that, or is it basically like those companies just don't have like the sheer like capacity and like supply to be able to give like that amount of a drug?
That's a good question. Actually, I did when I was doing research, it was an article I came upon, and there was a company, I don't remember the name, it was very small, but they actually did administer South Carolina a drug in 2016. That was the last execution that was ever done. And the problem with that was it was a European company, and their stock shares actually fell so low that the company was bankrupt. And I think a lot of them are now fearful, like that since people think it's morally wrong, they don't want to do something that will like hurt their image and cause their company to go bankrupt. And I think that's the big reason why many companies don't do it anymore.
No, yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's actually a good point. I didn't even think people wouldn't want to invest in something in a company that they didn't agree with what they were doing. So that's a really good point also. I was just kind of curious.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we don't have any questions, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes.
Thanks.